Right. Foundation class for the 100x devs cohort. Going to keep it very simple. Going to keep it very 0 to 1. The goal is to understand what is an IDE, how do you install one in your machine, very basic thing you need to do before you've ever started to code. Number 2, we'll understand HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Basically how websites were written for the longest time until 2010 when fancy frameworks like Vue.js, React came into the picture. They sort of changed the industry. But until then, this is how websites were written. That's how we will write our websites today. We'll understand a little bit about what is this thing called a DOM. More specifically, how can you manipulate the DOM? Slightly advanced stuff towards the end of the video. Don't worry about it if you don't understand it. We will recover this in our cohort. And finally, assignments for you to do. One small assignment, a small tweak in what we will be building today so that you can practice a bit on your own and start to code a little bit on your machine locally. Cool. That's going to be a brief of what we're doing today. Let's get right into the video. More practically, let's understand what are the terms that you're going to learn by the end of it. And I usually divide these into two parts, the small boy stuff and the big boy stuff. Small boy stuff is things which you should probably understand very quickly. These are basic things. These are actually things that you most probably might have done if you've done HTML, CSS in your 11th and 12th class. If not, these things you should be able to grasp very quickly. That includes tags in HTML, attributes in HTML, this thing called inline styles, which the common ones are background color, font. Basically, how do you put color on texts into a website? How do you put background on to a website? And some basics of JavaScript. How do you write if, else, for loops, all these things. We will cover all of this today. This is the small boy stuff, should be easy to digest. What will be hard to digest? External styles, classes and IDs. Why will this be hard? We will discuss very soon. But why were classes and IDs introduced in CSS? What benefit do they provide? And how JavaScript connects to your HTML DOM. We will understand this thing called the flex box, which is a sort of a newer technology, but the best technology to know if you want to position your elements on your page effectively. Connecting JavaScript to HTML. So HTML, CSS and JavaScript are the three sort of languages we are learning. How are they connected? How does JavaScript manipulate DOM? Why does JavaScript work inside the website? Why is it used? Might be a little jarring. And lastly, something called the Chrome Dev Tools, which we will do a mild deep dive into to understand what this is, why this is useful, especially if you're thinking of creating websites. Cool. Feel free to take a screenshot. Feel free to take a breather. These are the small things we will learn. These are the big things we will learn by the end of the video. What we are building? We are building a very basic landing page to begin with in just HTML and CSS. No need for JavaScript. We will understand the basics of HTML, basics of CSS. Try to build this landing page. What is this landing page? It's the landing page of zerodha.com. If you go here, it actually has a bunch of things. We don't have to worry about all of that yet. We just have to worry about this part, which is a top bar here, an image here, a big text here, a small text here, and a button. We're going to trying to replicate all of this, just this page using HTML, CSS. When we start, we will start very basic with just HTML. By the end of it, you will see such an ugly page, which looks very similar, but as you can see, the top bar is slightly messed up, doesn't have a very good style. The image still looks okay because, well, it is an image. We don't have to design it natively in HTML. This is just an external image we put onto the page. We see some ugly fonts, ugly styles, and then an ugly button at the bottom. All of this you can do just in HTML. You don't need to know CSS. You don't need to know JavaScript. If you want to style your page better, is when we add CSS into the picture. And now, as you can see, the top bar looks much cleaner compared to what only HTML would give us. You can basically position elements. We will see how. And you can also add styles to your elements. For example, here we have increased the font size, made the color gray, put some spacing here in the middle, put very big space between these two elements. We will understand how you can do all of this using CSS. You need CSS to do all of this. There is also like some sort of a box shadow slash outline here at the bottom of the nav bar. Image looks the same, slightly cleaner texts, and a button that actually has the blue color compared to the ugly button that was present here. That's what we will build in the second part using HTML plus CSS. The third part, where we want to add some JavaScript, we will try to create something new. What we will do is, below this page, after we've built this page, on the Zerodha page, if I scroll down, I see a bunch of these things. We will not see any of this, what we will create will be a returns calculator. Take a breather here, nothing too complicated. It's basically a small sort of section we will create here where a person has three inputs they can put: the amount of capital they're trying to put in, for example, 1 lakh rupees or $100,000, the number of years they're going to put this capital in, let's say 5 years, and the interest rate they are expecting on that specific asset, let's say 5%. They will click on the calculate button, and that should give their expected outcome at the end of all of these years. We will try to create this portfolio returns calculator. This is just a basic wireframe for it. I haven't coded this. I will code this live. These two I've already coded a bit. I will still code them again. But as you can see, like I had ugly styles here using just HTML. I had cleaner styles using HTML plus CSS. So I did code this like a few hours ago. This part I haven't coded. We will code it from scratch and understand where JavaScript comes into the picture. And if you want a hint, JavaScript is the language that actually lets you do some multiplication on all of these three elements to calculate the final returns. But we will get to it when we get to it. Okay? These are the three sort of assignments that we are doing and learning by building these assignments. Of course, while we are building the assignments, we will also go through the primitives of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and understand things from the very basics. The final goal though is to apply them to a website. Cool. Before we start, we should understand a little bit about browsers and a little bit about IDEs. So I'm going to take a pause here and ask you guys to do two things on your machine. Number one, download any IDE of your choice. What is an IDE? IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. I think it is similar to Notepad or TextPad or Google Docs, but it is on your machine, a software on your machine, and it lets you see code in a very pretty fashion. Some of you might have heard of VS Code or WebStorm or Vim or Emacs. These are all popular IDEs. The one that we will be using through my cohort, the most simplest one to understand, is this one called Visual Studio Code. So I would urge you to go to code.visualstudio.com and download for whatever operating system you are on. Once you download it, just install it, open it, and you should see something like this. Let's see. Something like this. And this is a IDE, the thing where you will be coding, the place where you will be putting your files, your folders, and editing files here on the right. So step one, install an IDE and try to open it on your machine. Step two, understand a little bit what are we coding today. What is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Why were they introduced? What are browsers? The things that actually understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. What are websites? All of these sort of jargon, let's try to understand before we dive in. Okay. Would urge you to pause, install VS Code, and then restart the video. I'm going to get right into it. What are browsers? How do they render websites? What is the purpose of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? How much of this is actually used in industry? We'll get there. Okay. So yaar dekho, a few years ago, when websites weren't a thing, what is the goal of a website? Let's start there. The goal of a website is to allow one person to talk to another computer. Believe it or not, it is that. It might not feel that, but if I go to whatever, google.com, what is happening is I'm telling a Google server in the US, in UK somewhere, to give me back some content, which specifically is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. And then that is what gets rendered here in my browser. So what is the goal of a browser? The goal of a browser is it needs to allow people to hit a specific server, and how are servers specified using this URL, get back some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and render it here on the screen. Browsers are something anyone can build. Google Chrome is the popular one, Firefox is another one, Microsoft Edge is another one, but anyone can build a browser. There is a specification or what's called a spec that says ki bhaiya, if this is the HTML, what the HTML looks like, HTML file looks like, this is what the CSS file looks like, this is what the JavaScript file looks like, this is how you need to render the page. And whoever are writing browsers, for example, Google Chrome, which in this case is Google, or Microsoft for Edge, or Mozilla for Firefox, they need to make sure कि हाँ, whenever HTML comes back from somewhere, it gets rendered a certain way. For example, I'm going to do a few things here in my computer. If you don't understand them, don't worry about it. We will get to this soon. If you're on a Chrome machine, I would urge you to go to google.com, right click and click on inspect here. I'm going to repeat. Go to google.com, right click, click on inspect. When you do, you will see some code here. This is HTML code. If you go to elements, this is HTML code. This is what your Google server gives you back, and your browser gets it, understands that this is HTML, renders the page. What does rendering mean? It puts the about button here, store button here, input box here, this button here. The developers of Chrome, which in this case is Google, have written all the code to interpret this HTML and render things correctly. Same for Firefox, same for Edge. If you look at the code a little bit, you will see there are some what are called tags here, a div tag, a style tag, an a tag, and these are the things that you can write in a simple HTML file. And then when you open that HTML file in either Chrome or Edge or Firefox, you see a very pretty page similar to what I see here. Okay? Small pause here. What were we trying to learn? We were trying to learn what are browsers and how do they render websites. And what is the answer? A browser is something like Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, or even something that you can write. It is completely open. Anyone can write a browser of their own. What is the goal? If your browser gets some HTML, which is some syntax that looks something like this, it should render that here inside this window of its, and that is the goal of a browser. It is supposed to render elements that it gets from an HTML file. Where does it get an HTML file from? How does it get an HTML file if I go to google.com or if I go to, let's say, chat.openai.com? Where does this HTML file come from is a different question. But once it gets some HTML for a website, the goal of a browser is to render it right here. Okay? That was the first part of this question. What are browsers? How do they render websites? What purpose do HTML, CSS, and JavaScript serve? Now, this is the third sort of important question to understand. Okay, why HTML, CSS, JavaScript? Why can't your browser understand C, C++, Java? The short answer is it can, but let's not go there. For most basic purposes, you can say your browser is only supposed to understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Whoever thought of the internet, whoever was the creator of the internet, / more specifically the creator of websites, said ke bhaiya, you need 3 languages to provide all the functionality that any website would need. For example, input boxes, writing something, pressing enter should do something. All of this can be encapsulated in 3 languages, and these are the 3 languages that every developer needs to know / use to be able to create websites. What are their individual purposes? We will get to, but are these 3 languages enough to create any website? Yes. Any website, doesn't matter how pretty it is. Yes, almost true. This statement is 99% true. There are some websites where you need C++ to run in the browser, which you can in a very weird way, but let's not go there. Most practical purposes, your browser is only able to understand these 3 languages, and you as a software developer only need to write this sort of a code. Can you write better code? Can you use other frameworks? Yes, you can use React, you can use Vue, but is this much enough? Yes, this much is enough to create as fancy of a website as you want. Go to any pretty website, cool website, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all can actually be written in raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. What do I mean by raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? I mean without any framework like React or Vue. Okay? How much of this is actually used in the industry though? You can do this, but is this really used in the industry? Is Facebook.com or Instagram.com actually written in raw HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? The answer is no. You write very minimal HTML. You write very minimal CSS as well. You do write a lot of JavaScript, but HTML and CSS are not usually used in the industry. Good to create kiddie projects, good to create projects until 2010. After 2010, frameworks like React came into the picture. They are what are used today by everyone to build websites. But that is not the goal of this video. The goal of this video is to understand how websites were created until 2010. For that, you will use just these 3 languages. Okay? IDE, I would urge you to either install, these are popular ones, install any one you like. During the cohort and for this video and most videos on the channel, I am going to use VS Code. It is the most popular IDE. What is the way to download it? Go to code.visualstudio.com, click on download and then install it and open it. You should see something like this, and it will be a little different. You won't see foundation class or whatever. It will see an empty VS Code. We will see how you can create a project here, add files, so on and so forth very soon. Okay? Feel free to pause, add an IDE. Let's understand the first part, which is HTML what is it used, and let's try to create this Zerodha landing page, an ugly version of it, in pure HTML.